All right, so I want to talk about something that got me genuinely excited the moment it was announced. Mountain Blade 2 Bannerlord War Sales. If you've played Bannerlord before, you already know what kind of game it is. It's massive, it's chaotic, it's messy in the best possible way, and it gives you that feeling of freedom no other medieval game really captures. But War Sales? This expansion feels like Bannerlord taking a whole new step. Not sideways, not backwards, forward. And honestly, it's about time. So, the big question, what is War Sales? Well, imagine Bannerlord, everything you love about its massive battles and open world. But now you're not just fighting on land. Now you're conquering the seas. The expansion adds full naval warfare, ships, fleets, new terrains, new systems, and a completely new faction inspired by Nordic seafarers. And if I'm being honest, the idea of Bannerlord with proper naval battles is something fans wanted for years. Not boats glued to a straight line, not scripted sequences, but real ship combat, controlling the wind, figuring out currents, boarding enemy vessels, ramming them, the whole works. The moment I first saw the footage, I knew this wasn't just a reskin. The movement of the ships has weight. You can feel the water pushing you, the wind either helping you or ruining your plans. And the craziest part is that War Sails doesn't treat ships like floating horses. It treats them like actual ships with momentum, speed, handling, and vulnerability. When you turn, it isn't instant. When you catch the wind at the wrong angle, you lose speed. When you're trying to ram an enemy vessel, you actually need to plan for the delay. It's not arcade, it's not simplified. It feels like a proper naval system crafted for Bannerlord's style of combat. What instantly stood out to me is how naturally it fits with the world of Calradia. You've got coastal settlements, rivers that actually matter, trade routes that now extend across the sea. Suddenly the map feels bigger, like way bigger than before. You're not just thinking in terms of north, south, east, west anymore. You're thinking, can I take a shortcut through this bay? Will pirates intercept me if I sail too close to that island? Should I travel by land or by sea? And the answer isn't always obvious. Sometimes the safer road is slower. Sometimes the ocean gives you speed but exposes you to ambushes. The new Nord-inspired faction fits right into this theme. They're seafarers. They look the part, they fight the part, and they bring a whole new identity to the game. Their units specialize in mobility, raiding, boarding actions. They feel different enough to shake up the combat meta, but familiar enough to fit into Bannerlord's world. And the armor? Oh man, the armor looks great. Hard leather, chain patterns, fur details, helmets that scream, "Don't mess with me." It's honestly one of the most visually distinct factions they've added.
Gameplay-wise, naval combat is the star, but that's not all the expansion brings. There's ship management, crew handling, new skills to train, new perks, and new tactics. You're not just commander of soldiers anymore, you're a fleet captain. You choose how your ships align, which ships lead the formation, whether you flank, whether you try to ram, or board. It's a completely different type of thinking compared to land battles. On land, you worry about cavalry charges, archer positions, infantry numbers. At sea, you worry about angles, timing, positioning, and momentum. And the boarding, oh yeah, the boarding is intense. Imagine two ships grinding against each other as your troops leap across, swinging axes, shields smashing, arrows flying. It feels chaotic in the way Bannerlord battles always do, but with a fresh twist. The ship becomes a battlefield with limited space, and that alone changes everything. There's no room to spread your troops, formations break instantly, and it becomes a brutal melee brawl with nowhere to retreat. It's claustrophobic, fast, and really satisfying. One thing I'm personally excited about is how War Sales impacts the campaign layer. If you've played Bannerlord long enough, you know how routine some parts of the map can feel. You learn the same roads, the same hideouts, the same choke points, but now, with naval travel, suddenly everything is unpredictable. That city you always ignored, now it matters because it has a port. That faction you rarely bothered with, now they control a coastline that might give them a huge advantage. Trade routes shift dramatically. You can actually become a maritime trader if you want, or a pirate, or an explorer. The game gives you choices it never had before. Now, one thing people always ask is, does War Sails have co-op? And from everything we know at this stage, Bannerlord's base game still doesn't fully support co-op campaign gameplay, so War Sails follows the same path. So no, you won't be commanding fleets with your friend beside you. But honestly, Bannerlord has always been built around the single-player campaign experience. It's about your story, your clan, your army. You move at your own pace, you conquer lands the way you want. And I feel like naval gameplay actually complements that solitude. It's you and your crew versus the sea and whoever's unlucky enough to cross paths with you.
What I find fascinating is how the devs approached movement. Steering a ship with realistic physics in a game that wasn't originally designed for water-based combat is a huge challenge. But they did it, and it feels natural. When you take your first ship out of the bay and feel the wind catch your sails, you know immediately that the expansion isn't just cosmetic, it's mechanical. It's transformed Bannerlord into something bigger. There are also new naval sieges. Yes, actual coastal assaults. Picture rolling up to a coastal castle under the cover of fog, your ships lined in formation, archers ready, trebuchets mounted on the deck. You approach slowly, enemy archers fire from the walls, your ship shakes as stones fall into the water around you. Then you land, your troops charge forward onto the beach, and the siege begins. It feels cinematic, like something out of a medieval war movie. And best of all happens seamlessly. No loading screens, no scripted cutscenes. It's just Bannerlord doing what Bannerlord does best. Performance-wise, I'm honestly surprised. Considering how demanding water simulation can be, the game runs better than I expected. Sure, in massive battles with multiple ships and dozens of troops boarding each other, you'll feel some performance dips depending on your PC, but overall, it's stable. Water moves beautifully, ships collide convincingly, and the physics don't freak out. And if you've played Bannerlord long enough, you know that alone is a miracle. Now, I don't want to pretend everything is perfect. There are some rough edges. Sometimes ships bump into each other in weird ways. Sometimes your troops get confused when boarding. And sometimes you'll probably curse the wind when it refuses to cooperate. But honestly, these quirks also give the game personality. I'd prefer slightly clunky realism over an on-rails naval system any day. The more time I spent with War Sails, the more I realized how big a deal this expansion really is. It doesn't just add content, it fundamentally changes how you play. You're not tied to roads anymore. You're not limited by mountain passes. You're not forced to march your army across half the map just to reach the coast. You can travel through the sea, raid coastal villages, blockade ports, cut off enemy trade, launch surprise invasions. It expands your strategic toolbox completely. And the feeling of freedom? It's incredible. There's nothing like taking your ship out onto open water at sunrise, watching the fog lift, hearing the crew shouting orders, the sails tightening as you gain speed. The sea becomes this open canvas where every trip feels like a story. Maybe you run into pirates. Maybe you find an unguarded island full of loot. Maybe a storm ruins your plans and forces you to improvise. It's unpredictable, but in a way that feels exciting rather than frustrating. The land portion of the game also benefits from the expansion. Coastal towns feel more alive now. Ports have more traffic, troops move differently across regions, and AI factions make smarter decisions when it comes to sea routes. Suddenly, you're paying attention to coastlines you would have ignored in vanilla Bannerlord. The Nord faction also brings fresh challenges. Their raiding style forces you to rethink your defenses. You can't just stack troops in a castle and call it a day. You have to watch your shores. They hit fast, retreat quickly, and have units that excel at naval boarding. Fighting them on land is one thing. Fighting them on water is another. It adds variety and keeps the game from feeling repetitive. Overall, War Sails feels like the kind of DLC Bannerlord needed for a long time. It's bold, ambitious, and transformative. It expands the world, enriches the combat, deepens the strategy, and gives players countless new ways to shape their campaign. It's not just an addition, it's evolution. So yeah, that's everything I've got to say about Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord, War Sails. If you're a fan of Bannerlord and you've been waiting for something to refresh the experience, this one's absolutely worth your attention. It's fresh, it's exciting, it's immersive, and honestly, it reminds me why I fell in love with Bannerlord in the first place. Thanks for listening.
Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.